I love crime novels, I love detective stories, and I love murder mysteries. But every now and then, I read something that completely pulls me out of the story. Not because the writing is bad, but because the police work just doesn't feel believable. I'm Jake Winters, I've written 2 crime thrillers, and one thing I've learned is this. Readers will forgive a lot. They'll forgive coincidences, they'll forgive unlikely twists, but if the investigation feels fake, the entire story starts to fall apart. So today, I want to talk about some of the biggest ways crime novels get police work wrong. Movies and novels love the lone genius detective. One detective interviews witnesses, processes evidence, interrogates suspects, analyzes DNA, gets warrants, and somehow catches the killer before anyone else even knows what's happening. Real investigations usually aren't like that. They're team efforts involving patrol officers, crime scene investigators, forensic analysts, detectives, prosecutors, and countless other people behind the scenes. Everyone contributes a piece of the puzzle, and one detective rarely solves an entire homicide alone. One thing I actually appreciated about Dexter was that, despite Dexter being the main character, the show constantly reminded us that he worked within a larger homicide unit. Batista, Masuka, Deborah, LaGuerta, Quinn, they all contributed to investigations in different ways. Dexter often had information no one else had, but the department itself still felt like a functioning team instead of a single superhero detective carrying the entire case. This one happens all the time. Someone finds a fingerprint, and then we cut to the next scene. We got a match. Reality is usually much slower. DNA analysis, fingerprints, digital forensics, and cell phone records often take days or weeks, sometimes much longer. What's interesting is that the waiting can actually make a story more suspenseful. Instead of immediately getting the answer, detectives have to continue interviewing witnesses, chasing leads, and making decisions without knowing whether their assumptions are even correct. That uncertainty keeps both the investigators and the readers engaged. Even Dexter, which certainly takes liberties with forensic science, often lets investigations unfold over multiple episodes instead of resolving every piece of evidence immediately. That slower pace makes Miami Metro feel much more believable. Crime fiction loves dramatic confession scenes. The detective corners the suspect, delivers an incredible speech, and suddenly the killer breaks down and confesses. Case closed. Real investigators don't build cases around confessions. They build cases around evidence because confessions can be false. People lie. People change their stories. Sometimes people can simply confess because they think it'll benefit them. Even if someone confesses, investigators still want to verify every part of it. Does it match the physical evidence? Does the suspect know details that were never made public? A confession isn't really the end of the investigation, it's just another piece of the puzzle. Real investigations are messy. Witnesses remember things incorrectly. Evidence contradicts itself. People lie for reasons that have nothing to do with murder. Innocent people look suspicious simply because they're hiding something completely unrelated. The most interesting investigations aren't straightforward. They're confusing. Sometimes detectives spend days chasing someone down who turns out to have absolutely nothing to do with the crime. Those dead ends aren't wasted pages. They make the eventual breakthrough feel earned. When every clue points perfectly toward the killer, the mystery starts feeling less like an investigation and more like a guided tour. Sometimes fictional detectives almost seem psychic. They instantly understand motives, predict the killer's next move, and notice clues nobody else could possibly see. Readers are smarter than that. One of the joys of reading a mystery is trying to solve it alongside the detective. You're watching the evidence, making your own guesses, and testing your theories. If the detective simply announces the answer because they're a genius, the reader never gets the chance to participate. One thing Dexter generally handled really well was showing investigators making educated guesses instead of magical deductions. They argued, they disagreed, they misinterpreted evidence. That uncertainty made the investigations feel much more grounded. Even good detectives make mistakes. They follow the wrong lead. They trust the wrong witness. They overlook important evidence. Not because they're incompetent, but because they're human. Ironically, those mistakes often make fictional detectives feel much more believable. Watching someone realize they've been wrong, admit it, and adjust their investigation is usually far more satisfying than watching someone who's always 10 steps ahead. One of the things that keeps a good detective story interesting is that the police miss things. They arrest the wrong people. They overlook the wrong suspects. Sometimes that can stretch credibility, but the investigators themselves still feel like people doing difficult jobs, rather than flawless crime-solving machines. This one's everywhere. The killer kidnaps the detective's family, targets their partner, leaves cryptic messages meant specifically for them. Can that happen? Sure. Does it need to happen in every story? Probably not. Sometimes the investigation itself is compelling enough. The detective doesn't always need a personal connection to the victim for readers to care. Professional duty, curiosity, and the desire to get justice are already powerful motivations. When every villain becomes obsessed with the detective personally, it starts to feel less like a crime investigation and more like destiny. Used sparingly, it can be incredibly effective. Used constantly, it loses its impact. One thing I've realized while writing crime fiction is that readers aren't just interested in solving the crime. They are interested in watching people solve it. The mistakes, the frustrations, the dead ends, the uncertainty. That's what makes investigations feel real. Readers also become invested in the detectives themselves. How does the job affect them? What sacrifices do they make? How do they handle failure? Those human moments often end up being just as memorable as discovering who committed the murder. Perfect detectives solving perfect cases usually aren't very interesting. Imperfect people trying to solve impossible cases almost always are. When I write crime fiction, I'm not trying to make detectives look like superheroes. I'm trying to make them feel like people. People who get tired, people who miss things, people who make assumptions, people who slowly piece together the truth. Because, in my opinion, that's much more interesting than someone who always has the right answer. Ironically, making your detectives less perfect usually makes them more compelling. Readers don't fall in love with flawless characters. They fall in love with believable ones. And if your investigation feels authentic, readers are much more likely to stay immersed in the story all the way to the final page. If you're a fan of crime fiction, what's the most realistic detective novel you've ever read? What's a police cliché that always takes you out of the story? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoy crime fiction, writing, storytelling, and following my journey as an indie author, I'd love to have you subscribe. I'm Jake Winters, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.